greetings to everyone. I shall begin with a small prayer in Sanskrit. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunattu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om. Namaste Raghunayakanandaji and Namaste Varshaji and our Bijuji and all our friends who are here to take part in this online session. So we have entered into the online yuga. So we don't have to travel. The world has become one through digital technology. In the sense now geographical boundaries seem to have been removed in digital level. See, I am sitting 2,000 kilometers from Chennai in a place called Kanpur between Lucknow and Delhi. So it's a very old city. It's around not at least 350 years old city. And recently we were looking into the old records. So the Kanpur has got an IIT itself. Then it has got some other research institutes also, like one Pulse Research Institute is there, Leather Research Institute is there, Sugar Research Institute is there, besides a lot of other things. So way back when India's first freedom struggle started in 1857, Kanpur was its seat. So it's such an old place. And our ashram, where I'm speaking from, itself is quite old. In 1931, it started. Now, why I gave all these facts is that how science has entered into our life. And all these facts, now we are able to connect to ourselves through science. The subject for our discussion is life a science or an art? At the end of the last class, you heard our yoga instructor saying that try to practice all this. That's how you will gain. So this term practice is very important. When we look at our life does consist of science, scientific facts, and art, both. So it's very difficult to separate them. Now, if you look at the world around us, science does not always mean that you are reading a book on science or you are having more electronic or digital gadgets with you. It doesn't make you scientific. It only means that you have got more things to handle, which is nice. Sometimes we become so attached to them, instead of we handling them, they start handling us. So you can't sit without checking your status, what's happening in Facebook, what's happening in WhatsApp. So you become so terribly attached to that. Sometimes you wonder whether you are operating it or they are operating you. So science has got this other side, which is the technological side, the digital side. The science others is scientific temper, thinking scientifically. So we have the scientific temper being given to us, which means try to find out cause and effect relationship. That is the scientific temper. Suppose you take milk and you want to create curd out of it. So you know how to do it. You take a drop of curd or a drop of some citric acid and put it in the milk, and the milk will be turned into curd. Now this is called a scientific relationship, a cause and effect relationship, where something is transforming another matter into this present state. So this is a very simple example. So same thing, we know the complex You all are engineers or studying engineering, so you know how you are studying. Suppose you are a student of the civil engineering. Not many people go for civil engineering these days, of course. They all want to go towards software engineering or hardware or electronics. So suppose you are into the civil engineering. So you know how in civil engineering also there is so much of scientific understanding required. Suppose you want to erect a pillar, you have to take out the soil, you have to study what kind of soil it is, that how deep we can go where the pillar can be put. It will not be sunken afterwards, it will be stable. So there's a scientific study of life, is part of life. But see, we have something like practical science. For example, cooking. Cooking has got a practical science. You know, if you want to make a particular dish, so what are the reactions of certain things in that? So when you should put the oil and when you should put the other ingredients, there's a science behind it. Suppose suddenly you put more salt, then you can squeeze in a little of lemon, or you can put some more ghee in that. So that's all scientific part of the cooking. So it means there are certain reactions, chemicals which we should be aware of. Then only we can do cooking. But is cooking only scientific? Cooking is also an art. So the same thing can be cooked by different people in a very delicious manner, and somebody may not do it in a delicious manner. You may not be knowing Swami Vivekananda himself was a great cook. Of course, he was a great monk. He was a great thinker, great philosopher, inspirer, great scholar, a great saint. But there are other sides of him also. Like he was a great poet, and he was a great artist, and he was also a great cook. And he used to say that only if a person has got a pure heart, he can cook well. So when he was in Thousand Island Parks in New York, there he stayed for about 2 months in retreat, in silence, and also talking to some of the devotees there who were with him. Sometimes he will say, "Now I will cook." So he will cook, and somehow because he was in India, he was from India, so he would put a lot of chilies, karam. And once or twice when he cooked, the people had tough time, because Americans, they found it difficult to take so much of karam. But the hot chilies were too much for them. But next time when it was cooking, one of the lady writes, who was in that group, says, now again Swami is going to cook. Oh my goodness. Again so much of the hot chilies will be there. But then she says, so what? If a Vivekanand can cook for me, at least I can eat what he has cooked. So that's how they looked at it. So cooking itself is a science as well as an art. Likewise, our life. In life, we have certain basic principles, and these principles are universal. Our great rishis have discovered these principles for us. One simple principle is called the principle of Purushartha. That whatever you do, you will get. So you sow a seed and you will get a plant. Likewise, what hard work you have done, that will surely produce its result. But then there are other factors which will influence production of result in that. So how much of care has been taken in that? Swami Vivekananda gave a lecture in the West. That lecture is called Work and Its Secret. Work and Its Secret, given in Los Angeles in 1900. That lecture, Swami Vivekananda says, one of the greatest lessons that I've learned in life is to pay as much attention to the means of work as to the end. So this is one scientific law. Suppose you want to succeed in life, you will have to keep in mind the principle of hard work. Without hard work, nothing is attained. Somebody somewhere has to play a role in order to attain a great achievement in life. But then, uh, let's go deeper. The scientific principles are universal. Suppose you experiment with something sitting in New York. You take up two chemicals, mix them together, create a third chemical. The same thing you can do sitting in Chennai House. So it is irrespective of what place you do it and who does it, it doesn't matter. So the material sciences are very objective. Material sciences are not person-based. They are very objective. Of course, we go to at some level and we say, yes, in the quantum physics or in quantum mechanics, we have the role of the observer also, but that's a different issue. Right now, we are speaking of how the word scientific means that there is a cause and effect relationship. Swami Vivekananda in his Gyan Yoga lecture says this. He says, look at it. Some people, they will say, so why does it rain? So a person who believes in some kind of a primitive understanding of rain, he says, well, there are a huge number of clouds which are gathered up and somebody on them, it jumps and that jumping creates water and it falls on your head. But then Swamiji says, when you try to put a cause other than and from where the effect from which is not related there, so then you are not scientific. So scientific when you find the cause within the effect. When you find cause within the effect, that's a science. So science is basically part of life. So a science, it doesn't mean that you watch more TV, you have more of scientific technological gadgets, or you play a lot of games. That's not the meaning of being scientific. So the scientific means you are able to think in this way, connecting the cause and effect relationship. So just as there is a cause and effect relationship outside, in our life, we have certain principles. This cause and effect means certain principles are there. So some eternal principle is there. So one principle, for instance, of life is that whatever you sow, you will get back. So it's not that what I have got today, or where did I sow it, why I'm getting suffering. So one of the questions which people ask, why there is suffering in life. We see some very learned books written on this subject. Very learned lectures are there. And people are trying to find, for instance, there was a famous person who had a son born to him at a ripe age, and the son was born in US. The poor baby was a little premature, and it was kept in an incubator. Suddenly there was loss of power, and the baby was in the incubator for about half an hour without much oxygen. That damaged its brain forever. So think of the suffering of the parents. So why did this happen? Of course, we can say the negligence of those who are looking after it and other related factors. But there are so many things like that happening in life. We cannot always find full answers to them. So what we say is maybe some Purva Janma Karma was there in previous life. He had done something which he had to experience in this life. So not that this answer will completely satisfy a very intelligent person, but is there a better solution? Is there a better answer? If there is a better answer, give it. The other day I was talking to a young man. So he was saying the same thing, and he said, you say we inherit the things from the past life, and in past life we inherited things from past life, and then past life. From where did it all start? So our scriptures say, Swami Vivekananda's famous lecture in Chicago also, he makes mention that this is called avidya. The Sanskrit word for this avidya. So when did the avidya start? Nobody knows. But it can end. And that's all that matters to us. Suppose you are in a dark room and somebody comes and tells you, come on, I'll take you outside this darkness. You say, no, I won't get out of the darkness. You first tell me from how did this darkness come? What this darkness consist of? When did it start? Well, why? What's the use for all that? Come on, find the answer. Find the brightness outside. In same way, we can, through our purushartha, come out of the suffering of life. That's the point. So through karma, through rightfully done action, we can slowly train our mind not to get affected by things of the world. And that's the ideal. That's what the Bhagavad Gita says. Samatvam yoga uchyate. We have to attain that state of samatva. Samatva does not mean that you are very, very negligent. So you should not think that a person who is a very sattvic person, who is very state of great equanimity, he has got no feeling for others. He has got no warmth in his behavior. He doesn't have compassion. That's never the meaning. That if a person says that a person who has attained samatva has no compassion, he has not understood the idea of samatva. So samatva or equanimity of mind means that there is a great feeling for others also. In fact, you can feel for others better when your mind is quiet. If the mind is affected by so much of jealousy, anger, greed, and such lower impulses, how much you will be able to feel for others? You will be able to feel only perhaps those who are related to you. Perhaps. But a person, a real sage, one who has risen above these lower things, he can feel for everyone. There's an incident in Swami Vivekananda's life. When he was in Belur, Belur is the headquarters of Ramakrishna Mission. It's in the banks of Ganga, near Kolkata, 5 kilometers from the Havada station. It is right on the banks of Ganga. A very old institution now. It is 120 plus years. So there is a room where Swamiji stayed, and finally he left his body there. And in that place, one day, late at night, in the next room where he was living, there's a Swami Vivekanandaji, his brother disciple, who got up to feel. He just got up to perhaps take some glass of water. He found that Swami Vivekananda had not slept, and he was pacing up and down. And he was very surprised and said, Swamiji, what happened? That Swamiji said, I don't know, not getting sleep, because somewhere some great tragedy has happened. So I don't know, there's some great human tragedy. Those were not the days when we have the wireless connections, or we had today's technology of conveying things instantly, breaking news or building news. Nothing of that was there. So anyway, next morning the news came through some means that exactly at the time when Swamiji felt disturbed in his room, there was a big earthquake in somewhere in Southeast Asia, which killed many people. So Swamiji, without knowing this, he was so deeply perturbed by it. He had great compassion. So being a man of samatva does produce a sense of compassion in your heart. Now, we spoke of the question. We began with a question. The question is life an art or a science? So I said it is a science to some extent. There is a lot of scientific side of it. You have certain rules of management, rules of your day-to-day behavior, the scientific laws. Say you have your word does not consist only of scientific things. The students in IIT, for instance, they understand this fact, and the administration has so designed the course, and which is being done in some other engineering colleges also. When you are not only taught the core sciences, the hard sciences of engineering, but you also learn about the humanities side. You learn about literature, you learn economics, you learn about philosophy, because you have, suppose you become a good engineer, how are you going to practice your engineering? Are you going to practice your engineering in some other planet? It's right on this planet only, and this planet consists of a society. It consists of an economic system, financial institutions. It consists of all that what we call around us society. So we must know about that society. So if you know only of science, which is great that you should know about science, but if you know only of science, you have not seen the other side of life. When I was in Chennai, one American lady had once come, and she had made a very, she was making her own study about meditative practices in India. No, not in India, in Chennai, where meditation was being taught. So we had a long interview, and she made a wonderful statement. She said, Swami, I find one thing, that a large number of young people who suffer from depression, who suffer from certain mental conditions, are people who have never had done any study of literature or any study of humanities, a course in humanity. They've never done. They've only studied the scientific side. And in the scientific side, she made a remark, there is a binary view of life. As you know, all those who are software engineers, when you make create a code, you must know what the binary part is. It is either it is 0 or 1, whether it is right or wrong. You don't have in between. So it is black or white. So whereas life does not consist like that. Life is not binary. Suppose you have failed in an exam. I don't wish that anybody should fail, but suppose you have failed. It doesn't mean that life is gone. Life has got infinite possibilities. I remember one of the students once making a remarkable statement. He said he was passing through a difficult time. He had a lot of domestic issues and he was not doing well in his studies. A kind of depression had set in. And I don't know why, but it struck him. He started watching the Mahabharata serial. It was available to him some way. So he said, after I finished watching the serial, it took away all my depression. Because I found the life has got so many ups and downs. I accept it. How much problems the Pandavas faced, Krishna faced, Krishna's mother faced. Now, if you read the Ramayana also, it's the same thing. Was Rama always sitting, smiling in his kingdom in Ayodhya? He had to pass through so much of hardships. Even after he returned, after killing Ravana, he returns to his state. Even then also he had to pass through. So we generally want to see only a very pleasant side of life. Like you see Swami Vivekananda, he was very famous. He was very great, right? But look at the difficulties he had to pass through when he went to the West. I'm not speaking of the periods which he passed through in India. We have plenty of it. In fact, we have a small little booklet on that. It is Heroic Struggles of Swami Vivekananda, a small booklet by Swami Tathagatanandaji. And so he says, when he went to the West, he was the first monk to go there. So people did not know that monks could be like this to look at. They wear kavi clothes, they shave their heads, and they dress like that and they speak like that. It was so new to the people there. In some places, Swamiji was so much insulted. In some places, he says, even people hooted me out. They even threw stones at me. Not in a very big way, some small pelting of things. Because what this man, strange looking person, has come. Today in the West, we don't have this. In 100 years, many monks have gone, things have changed. A lot of monks live there. People understand what it is. But that was not so. At one point of time, the missionaries were so unhappy with Swamiji's teachings that in one place where they invited Swamiji, they gave him a cup of coffee filled with, mixed with poison. And if Swamiji was to take that cup, he would have died. But as he was about to take, the story goes, he saw in a vision Sri Ramakrishna appearing before him and telling him not to drink that coffee. So he had to face a lot of problems. My point is, when we have the scientific side of life, we must appreciate that we are scientific. Today we have speaking to you sitting 2,000 kilometers away, or you are listening some other place, somebody else. So it's all because of the scientific side. But there is the art side, where we learn to face life, learn the art of human relationships. How many people, they suffer from so much of mental turmoil and pain and sorrow because they do not know how to have healthy human relationships. In fact, I remember UNESCO years ago came up with a document, and then it came out with the second version of the document. And the first version of the document was, what is education? So education is, they said there are two pillars of education. Education is learning to do things. You learning to do things means you become a good plumber or a good computer engineer, or you learn how to keep accounts, or you learn how to build a building. You have to do a business. There are hundreds of professions in this world. So you have learning to do. And the second pillar they said was learning to be. What kind of person you become? You become a respectable person of the society because of your character, because of your way you behave yourself. So these two pillars were spoken of: learning to do and learning to be. Later on, I think it was in 1997 or 98, that UNESCO brought out another document where they spoke of two more pillars. And that is learning to live with others. It's also we have to learn. Learning to live with others. Have we learned to live with others? Respect each other? How to solve our differences in a meaningful way? It's a very important thing. We will not always agree with everything with everybody. It is not possible because each one is made unique. But we can build up our bridges of understanding across, and we can have sympathy, we can have empathy, we can stand in their shoes and see, oh, how he's suffering, how he's having this problem. For instance, we have seen how Taliban have the havoc that is created in Kabul airport. Nearly 1.5 lakh people, 1.5 lakh people are standing outside the Kabul airport to get inside. And about there are 40 to 50,000 vehicles, jammed like a traffic jam. What an enormous thing! So there's a big wall, and this side of the wall are the people who are now going to be subject to the Taliban rule, and the other side, which is controlled by the Americans. So there is a ray of hope. People can go to some other country, etc. So I saw a small video of a little baby being given over by a young lady and her husband to an American. Please take this baby somewhere in America so that, or somewhere in some European country, he will come up. Here, if it is there, the baby may not survive. Imagine this. So there is a humanity, there is a feeling. How did those Americans feel about that? So Swami Vivekananda had this great feeling for others. He could, there is an interesting statement. Once when he was in America, one lady, she said, Swami Vivekananda's, he was talking about his teacher, Sri Ramakrishna, about his guru. Then Swamiji said, I am a disciple of a man whose shoes, laces, I am unfit to open. And, he was practically illiterate. Then she said, but Swami, it is your intellect which we really admire. And Swamiji chuckled and replied, that is because, like me, you are also a fool. Don't understand? The real meaning of life is not just intelligence, not just, becoming intellectually big, but also having feeling. That's the art part of mind, art part of life. Swami Vivekananda gave a series of talks on practical Vedanta, which are part of his complete works in second volume. There he analyzes many aspects of life. So there's one aspect of life which deals with whether life is all about head, which means logical thinking, scientific thinking, or is it something to do also with feelings, compassion? How do we interact with others? How do we forgive others? How do we carry our things forward? Then Swamiji says, intellect is required, but it is only a street cleaner. It doesn't make on its own any walking. For walking, you require heart, unite feeling. And look at these people who are very dedicated to any ideal, whether it's a good ideal or a bad ideal, doesn't matter. I'm not speaking of that. Look at the tremendous feeling they put into it, tremendous faith and commitment they put into it. So there is a science and there's an art, like medicine. Medicine is both an art and a science. It's the same medicine, same diagnosis, and the same scientific and medical facts. Two doctors handle in two different ways. I mean, these days earlier we used to say the science, medical science. Yes, medical science is there, but there is also the art of treatment. In art of treatment, we take care of the human quotient, the feeling quotient. We can always empathize with the patient. We are not dealing with only disease, we are dealing with the patient. So the patient has his own fears, his own past history, and each one is unique. So this is how the doctors also now understand that it is not just science, but also there is an art of treatment. How you speak to a patient, are you sympathetic in your... Suppose, I remember there was a young boy in Bangalore. He was told by his doctor, this boy had some issue with his breathing. The doctor said, oh, now you have got asthma. All your life you will have to take medicine. There is no way out for you. This little boy, he was a teenager, late teenager. He got so frightened. He went home and took poison. Fortunately, immediately people caught him and did all the thing. He survived. Arey, what an irresponsible doctor. I'm not saying the doctors are responsible. We have great love and respect for them. I'm saying there is this particular case. The doctor has been so very inconsistent. I mean, he has not been very human. He should have told him, look, brother, now you've got this disease. These are the things you should do. Don't worry, you'll be all right. You should have given him a support inside. So many doctors are like that. They don't give you support. They just tell you some fact and then throw you out. That should not be so. There are also very sympathetic doctors. There are great human beings. So now that you try to become engineers, as you take up your life, whether as engineer or with an engineering degree, you take up some other work. Let us not forget our human side of life. Life is not just scientific. Life needs a lot of sympathy, a lot of compassion, a lot of patience, a lot of adjustment, forgiveness. Think of those millions of people. Please read your own history of your own country in a right royal way. Think of those millions of people who came from what we call as Pakistan today, all the Hindu people who came from that part to what we call as India today, and how many of them were deprived of everything. So many people died. The Prime Minister declared 14th of August as the partition memories Memorial Day. So think of that, how those people withstood those pressures of life and then made their personal lives into success stories. Or you think of the Tamilians which came from Sri Lanka. They went in different parts of Europe, they are settled. How they came up and they faced. Or think of the Bengal when 1972 Bangladesh was created. Think of those stories. Think of some village woman passing through a difficult period. You derive so much of inspiration from them. You don't have to be always a great public figure to be really great. You can be great in your own life, in your own way, without being popular, without being well known. So let us understand that art and science of life, they go together. We need to be scientific, must understand certain facts of life. They are in the Upanishads, it's called Esha Dharma Sanatana. This is the eternal law of life. For instance, in one of the sutta, it is said Yagyena yagyam deva tani dharmani prathamanyasan. There is a first law of life that you must give to others, not only receive but also give. So this is a scientific side, but you must always dharmasya moolam, daya dharmasya moolam. Without the compassion, there is no dharma, no life. So let us understand both in a larger perspective and try to, uh, as the last session ended saying, try to practice. So let us try to practice a few things, a few things, and try to make our life a blessing to ourselves as well as to others. So thank you very much. I close here. Namaste.